Welcome to Needham School Spotlight. I'm Dan Goodykantz, Superintendent of Schools. Joining me today to talk about the Needham Public Schools math program are three of our key leaders who are leading efforts to really improve math instruction throughout all of the classrooms in Needham. I want to welcome Judy Wojcik, the Elementary Math Instructional Coach Leader, John Shea, the High School's Math Department Chair, and Ms. Tammy Guzzoni, who is the middle schools, both at High Rock and Pollard, Math Curriculum Coordinator. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
You know, ever since I've been in Needham, and I'm sure it's the case for you, math is always a hot topic. And for a lot of folks out there in the community, there's the old math, the new math, Common Core math, and Think Math, and things seem to change and grow. And what I'm excited about is that we finally have in place three superb leaders, from my perspective, who are looking at the continuum of math instruction, grades K through 12. We really, until the three of you, are now working together, we haven't had that, and it's a very exciting story to tell, and hopefully we can talk about that a little bit this morning. So Judy, I actually like to begin with you to maybe talk a little bit about, broadly speaking, at the elementary level, what are the broad goals of the elementary math program in Needham?
The broad goal, first of all, is to keep the curriculum aligned, coherent, focused, and rigorous, along with the Common Core standards that everybody's been hearing about. And we're looking at helping to support children and their understanding of mathematics rather than just working on procedures and being quick and speedy with it, because that's the important part of getting them prepared for the upper grade levels. The basis of that would be to really give students a solid understanding of number sense and number concept, so that by the end of third, fourth grade, they can really begin to dig into the mathematical aspects that they need to know and to learn and concentrate on. So giving them a good solid base of number sense and number concept is what we're working towards.
And so we move up from elementary to the middle school, and what are our broad, what's the handoff into the middle school?
So building on the work that the teachers have done in the elementary grades, the big goals are really application, problem solving, and discovery. We want students to really identify with the mathematics and be able to take it to another level without simply doing the procedural. We have a lot of students who seem to feel really competent and capable when they're doing lots of different equations, but then when you start kind of throwing in the more difficult and rigorous word problems or real-life applications, that's where it becomes more difficult. So we focus a lot on that in the classroom to make sure that students are successful with that. And then we really do a major pre-algebra focus and proportional reasoning focus so that students are ready for the high school.
And then at the high school?
And at the high school, kind of taking the work that the elementary and middle school teachers have done and kind of taking the kids to another level, continuing with the application, try to give math purpose to the students, because oftentimes they question, what do I need to learn this for? But really to kind of cap on their number sense and kind of show them that the math that they learned in elementary school and through middle school is not really that different in high school. It's just really, it looks different and it feels different, but they're still sort of, the operations are much the same. And as the students progress through the high school, just allowing them to use tools for technology to sort of enhance their learning and to sort of get them to understand things a little bit more deeply and more meaningful. And really to kind of allow them to sort of use, in the classroom to learn from their mistakes, to not be afraid to sort of take a step, and if you don't get it right, no big deal. Now's the time to sort of embrace the fact that you made a mistake, but what can I do to learn from that? And to really to kind of take risks. Because oftentimes students are hesitant to sort of jump into a problem because they feel like they don't know where to begin, and so that gets a little frustrating for them.
So if I'm correct, this is really year 2 of having this structure in place. This is your second year at the elementary level, and Tammy now the second year for math, first year for math.
First year for just
First
math.
year for math. So really, this is the first full year of having this articulation and this continuation of K through 12 of the three of you really working together to pull this really cohesive and coherent structure together, which I think is perfectly exciting because it had existed really only at the high school. My first 7 years in Needham, so it's great to see that happen. Judy, you mentioned the Common Core, and Tammy and John and Judy, really any of you, I just want to comment for a moment. Common Core. Folks are hearing that. What do we mean by Common Core? What's Common Core math? What's the big picture there?
So the Common Core state standards were adopted in 2011, and they were a national effort to make more cohesion amongst the states. So Massachusetts adopted the Common Core in 2011 and also inserted some of our own. We wanted to make sure that they were as rigorous as possible. So since Massachusetts adopted them, we've been working to align our curriculum to the Common Core. We've spent every year meeting the benchmarks, so as we would get a list of the Common Core standards that we had to make sure that we were aligned to, and in the middle grades, we would do that every year and make sure that we were teaching the specific nuances and the new things, and also sending things into other grade levels. So a lot of the content that we had experienced in, let's say, grade 6 was moved down to grade 5, grade 7 to grade 6, grade 8 to grade 7, and some of the high school content has been moved into grade 8. So we've seen an increase in rigor. We've seen an increase in the expectations for students around problem solving, and one of the things that's also tied to the Common Core standards is the standard for mathematical practice, which are really habits of mind, and so it talks about perseverance and using precision, and so all of these things are things that we as teachers and as leaders look for in the classroom to make sure that students are best prepared for when they move on, not only into the high school, but also beyond.
And that starts in the elementary grades for sure. Starting to build a community of learners, helping children to talk with each other about mathematics, using the precision of the language, using the vocabulary, because that's always a difficulty too. So we really, at the elementary level, work with a combination of literacy and mathematics so that students have that grounding and understand what's being asked of them and what they're reading as they go through.
I hear that sometimes in visiting classes and in talking to parents occasionally that, geez, there seems to be more writing that you bring up in math as kids are thinking about what they're doing. Is that the case? Are kids experiencing that?
It is, because communication of the mathematics and the thinking of the mathematics is really key and important in our society, really. Technologically speaking, the Common Core standards were written so that we are more college and career ready with our students so that they can go in either path off to a career regardless of what math they're taking or into college. So that idea of being able to communicate clearly is important.
In order to pull this together, there has to be a lot of conversation among the three of you and collaboration. I mean, what do you kind of go off to your office alone, Tammy, and occasionally call Judy and John? You sometimes see them. How does that work?
I had a conversation with someone as I was walking in today saying this was the worst winter for this job because we go back and forth between buildings all the time. So within the construct of what Judy and I do, we go between buildings that we are responsible for teachers there.
Right. You're 5 elementary schools,
right.
2 middle
Two
schools.
middle schools.
Okay.
Then we also go and we meet each other, whether it's at Judy's office or my office or John's office, so that we can have those conversations. And Judy and I have spent a lot of time talking about data and trying to figure out how we can best convey messages about data to principals. And also the transition conversations, I think, have been fantastic because,
Yes.
Talking about what 6th grade teachers are seeing and feeling in the classroom, and so I can convey that to Judy and she can have conversations with the coaches at the elementary schools and with the 5th grade teachers and the 4th grade teachers. And similarly, we have transition meetings with the high school teachers where we don't have the opportunity to create a meeting time for elementary and middle school teachers, or just too many of them, but we can do that with the middle and the high school teachers. So we've done that as well so that we can have those conversations and talk about, okay, so what are you seeing in 9th grade that we might need to be doing differently in the middle grades as
Right.
well.
And since I've been here, Tammy and I have met very frequently. But both the middle school and the high school teachers meet either in the fall, typically in the fall and or in the spring to
The
sort
math
of
teachers.
Yes.
Getting
to begin
together.
the year,
Okay.
to sort of see the handoff, and then to sort of end the year, and just to sort of discuss what's been done and how they should end the year. In the beginning of the year, they like to sort of communicate a little bit about certain students, what teachers really are very student-centered, I think, in the Needham district, and they want to just sort of share a little bit of knowledge about the students and their strengths and their weaknesses and that sort of thing. Tammy and I think we spent many hours this past winter together, sort of just looking at the Common Core curriculum for the Algebra 1 curriculum and just really looking at what Needham currently does and what we're expected to do, and just to sort of where we move on. from there.
Also, I think it's true that some middle school teachers or the middle school teachers have been up to visit the high school in all areas, and are some high school
Yes.
teachers coming to the middle school? Is that going to be part of the exchange, or is it right now middle school to the high school?
I think currently it's just middle school to high school at this
To visit
point.
classes, see what's going on in English and social studies and math and science
Right.
and everything. Great. I mean, again, that conversation, that awareness, gaining that perspective is just helpful for everybody all the way around. I wanted to, Tammy, talk a little bit about the middle school, because I think what you're referring to with the Common Core curriculum is a bit of a realignment of expectations and curriculum standards throughout the district. And it seems to be, as I understand it, hitting the middle school and also the high school, but hitting the middle school in a way that's a shifting thing because of the way we've run our program.
Right.
Tell me what that looks like.
What that looks like is the Common Core standards are the standards that we've aligned our A-level math course to, or our courses in grades 7 and 8. And what we found as we were aligning was that we weren't meeting the needs of all students. The students in the B level weren't getting the same standards that the other students were because we were moving at a slower pace. So we, over the course of 3 years, we planned out how we would make the shift. So we've inserted now a course that's a compacted course. It's the Pathway 1 course. And it's 3 years of content over the course of 2 years. So that's 7th and 8th grades. And so that's approximately 25% of students were placed into that course, and then 75% of the remaining students were in Pathway 2, which is our current A level now. So the good news is that we're not precluding any child from taking accelerated in the high school, so all students still have an opportunity to take an accelerated course. It just depends on which pathway you're in, what course you take freshman year. So Pathway 1 students will be, as long as they're successful, will be ready to take geometry freshman year, and Pathway 2 students will be ready to take Algebra 2, which is the course that they've typically taken.
Well, and of course, for some folks who are listening to this, that's very different than their high school experience, which was, Algebra 1 in ninth grade, and then geometry followed by Algebra 2, and we've been moving away from that in any event, but this really does realign that. So that will be implemented at the middle school beginning next year, and you've already been in communication with parents.
Yes.
And done a very nice presentation for the incoming 7th graders at Pollard. And how is that being received?
I think overall it's been received well. We used a process that was data driven, so the recommendation process we used to use was simply, the teacher said, well, I think the child should be here, and I think that, this child should be there. And so we had a lot of overrides because
Parents saying,
parent
what, I
overrides.
think my child belongs in this class rather than that class.
Right,
Okay.
and so we, at this point, we learned from other districts, and so we inserted 4 assessments, 3 of them standardized. One was a district-determined measure, a mid-year assessment, and then teacher recommendations. So we had cutoffs, and that basically put us in a position where we had about 23 to 25% of students who had been recommended based on that process. And we sat around a table. It was me and the 5 6th grade math teachers, and we talked about kids, and we talked about kids who we really felt like might be maybe ready for Pathway 1, but they weren't really sure, so we talked through that.
And you looked at data.
We looked at the data.
It wasn't just a conversation or anecdotal, but there was some data to
Right.
accompany that conversation and inform the decision making.
Right, and it was great because we had other people sitting at the table, and we would look at grades, and even though a child may have an A in a certain classroom, you would see within the grade book that there might be Bs on unit assessments or C's on unit assessments, demonstrating that they're not quite ready for an accelerated pathway or a compacted curriculum, but they're doing really well on grade level. So the conversations were really rich. I feel like teachers really put a lot of time and effort into making sure that students were placed appropriately, because we want kids to be successful and feel really good about math.
So can parents is there still an override process, or what is that?
So we did have an override process. The override deadline was April 10th, and the process was that parents emailed or called me, and we set up a meeting, and Tamitha Bibbo, the principal of Pollard and myself, we sat down and we talked through the data with parents. So we had about 22 parents who came in and wanted to override. We talked about where their child fell in relation to the students who were placed in Pathway 1. We talked about the percentile where the child fell in relation to the entire class. And for some parents, they said, you know what, we want to just try it anyway. If we also have a deadline for October 15, or around there, if a child's not doing well, it doesn't make sense to keep them in that course.
Yep, sure.
So, some parents said, let's try it anyway, and some other parents said, my child's good where he or she is, and other parents said, you know what, we're going to do this and we're going to do whatever we can to make it work. So I think, overall it was a good experience because we learned a lot from the experience, and I think parents learned a lot from the experience too, just kind of getting a sense of, I think sometimes it was just, well, where does my child fall in relation? Is my child really at the cusp, or is my child in the middle of the Pathway 2 group? So I think that a lot of it was curiosity on their part.
Well, so then students, John, will head to the high school, and with this realignment, what are the implications for the high school? What happens with students when they come here? What does that look like?
So when the students come here, as Tammy said, the students that are in the enhanced pathway will come in taking geometry, and then followed by Algebra 2 the second year, because the topics in Algebra 2 assume that you've had geometry. So there'll be, which is very different than what we have right now, because students either come into the high school taking an Algebra 1 course or an Algebra 2 course, and typically 10th grade is geared towards all sophomores. So that's going to be a change for us as we move forward. I think in the end, I'm hopeful that there'll be an opportunity for us to be able to offer more classes, because there is, in the pathway, it's typically in the Common Core, it's typically Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry and calculus, but there is now our pre-calculus class is it's a continuation of Algebra 2, so there is some overlap in the material. So as we move forward with alignment to the Common Core, I'm looking forward to some of the elimination of the material and allowing for sort of a new take on the pre-calculus course to sort of like really introduce topics that we don't ordinarily do currently. So and then students can go on to take calculus and statistics.
Do we have, right now, what do you think is happening with math in junior and senior year? Are more students interested in statistics or AP calculus or calculus? Is there any trending going on? Or
There's
or AP computer science?
125% of the seniors this particular year are enrolled in math.
125%.
That means
Wow.
seniors are taking more than one math class.
Wow.
So yeah, I know that seems a little bit odd to sort of say it like that, but I would say that we have a good chunk of the students that take calculus and or statistics as a class, and I think when students take calculus, it makes a lot of sense simply because they've had a pre-calculus course. So if you are going to take pre-calculus and you want to take calculus ever in your life, it really just makes sense to take it right after you've taken pre-calculus. But students that go on to sort of humanities or social science are really benefiting from taking the statistics class that we offer. And the interesting part about that class,
Or become superintendents of schools. They should have taken a statistics class in high school. I'll offer.
It's a very language-based class, so the students really, talking about speaking math and interpreting math. I think that is the class out of all the ones that we offer that really forces the students to do that.
So I want to make sure that I'm clear that the pathway then, either pathway that you are placed on at the middle school, you can end up taking calculus if you choose.
Yes.
It might be AP calculus or it might be calculus, but the pathways allow that to happen. I think that's important for parents to hear, that we're trying to really prepare students for the most challenging and rigorous of mathematics that we can, and they should know that beginning at the elementary level, but certainly at the middle school when the pathways diverge. They both lead to a similar place. One certainly AP calculus and the other calculus. Beyond curriculum, all of you work with teachers. and principals. I mean, you do all this wonderful work supporting them in the classroom and assisting them and guiding and supervising, evaluating them. I list evaluate last because, frankly, I think the supporting and the guiding is really the most important work that you do. Judy, I wanted you to maybe comment on what happens at the elementary level. We have math instructional coaches in our elementary schools. What do you do? What do they do?
I am assigned to the Mitchell Elementary School, so half of my job is being a coach at that school for the teachers, and then the other half of my job is working as the district leader and making some of those decisions. As a math coach, our main job is to support the learning for all students through our support of the teachers. So you don't see the coaches so much as doing direct service to students or with students as you would seeing them working with the teachers themselves, meeting during their teaching collaborative times, doing some professional development during those times, co-teaching with and co-planning with teachers, and then being in the classroom working possibly with small groups of students, and that's where the student support would come in there also. So their work is mainly to support the teachers, just as coaches support players and
Sure.
musicians
Well,
and
it's-
business leaders, and everybody
Absolutely.
seems to have coaches these days.
And I imagine the teachers really appreciate the additional support and guidance and structure.
I think it's really raised the awareness, as you said at the very beginning, of math and the importance of it, and kind of bringing it onto the level with literacy at the elementary.
Well, and
levels.
the reality is, particularly in the elementary schools, that most of our teachers, I know this because I'm involved in the hiring, most do not necessarily come with a deep math
Right.
background. It is more literacy based, just because of the way we educate in the Commonwealth and in the country, our elementary teachers. And so to have this additional boost and source of guidance and structure and confidence, I think is absolutely something that is helpful.
It's really exciting, and it's
Yeah.
like exciting to watch the teachers learning some new things and new approaches, and to especially hear the students using those approaches and those understandings.
How at the high school, John? What are some of the things that you're tackling as you support teachers and providing them?
We since the state adopted the Common Core standards, I think it's just been really an ongoing process to sort of just kind of shift gears and really try not to think that we have to do everything differently. We really want to try to I think we have a good thing going on, and so the question is always, why do we have to do this? It's working, but we can always look for improvement and try to improve our curriculum and instruction. So I think that is the major thing that we've been working on over the last couple of years. We did a lot of soul searching because in the Common Core curriculum there are two pathways. There's an integrated pathway and a traditional pathway, and the integrated pathway embeds geometry and algebra together in a single course. And we, for a while, we considered that as an option for us, and we really did some thoughtful discussions around that. We included students in some focus groups, parents in focus groups, and we're trying out different curriculums and that sort of thing. So we really, I think the teachers are, in addition to sort of keeping things going, they're also looking to sort of how are we going to do things differently in the next coming years in order to sort of meet the needs of the students that are coming from the middle school.
Well, and it strikes me that it's about change. What you're talking about is
Yes.
providing a different kind of approach and a change for elementary teachers. You're talking about the very same thing at the high school. Folks have to realign some of their thinking and expectations, and that's certainly happening at the middle school as you discuss the pathways. What's some of the other work that's happening at the middle school with the teachers, or what are you seeing? What's the takeaway for you as you support middle school teachers?
Well, one of the things that's different from elementary to the middle school is that the teachers are math specialists, and so within the sixth grade we're heterogeneously grouped, and I think that already creates some issues, because you do have students who come in with a stronger mathematical background and might be ready to do more, yet we have a scope and sequence that we follow. So we are constantly trying to find ways to really engage and extend kids yet also making sure that we support the students who might be struggling. And so I think for sixth grade teachers, that's the big piece. So we do a lot of professional development, and the teachers are always in 6th through 8 groups, so we don't spend our time just in 6th grade groups and just in 7th and just in 8th, because there's a lot of really amazing conversation and learning that happens when we work in vertical groups. So the cohesiveness, the alignment, to be able to say to a teacher, well, you know, we taught it this way in 6th grade, and then have the 7th grade teachers be able to pick up on that is fantastic. And we have the luxury of having the time, because we have 6th through 8 department meetings set aside, which is it's great. This year we spent time on the standards for mathematical practice and really looking at how do we develop activities that will include writing, that will also include ways to get kids really thinking and making conjectures and thinking about justifying their answers, because oftentimes they just say, well, but I know it's right. We'll justify why it's right. So that's another piece that we've been doing a lot of.
Well, I appreciate one of the things you said, and Judy, you echoed it as well earlier, is we're trying to provide support for teachers and for students where they're at, and make sure they take it to the next level. Often, I've thought in schools we've used a deficit model where we're only going to target support for those students who are struggling, and we've defined struggling as someone who's not at grade level or who doesn't understand the material or who's fallen behind. I define struggling as someone who may be that, but also someone who's beyond grade level or who's ready for a challenge but is languishing in a classroom because the teacher's not prepared or the teacher has to divert attention to children who are really struggling. We certainly have to take care of all the children. But I think a struggling student can also be a child who's ready to move on and needs to be accelerated in some way, whether they're in grade 3 or grade 7 or grade 12. And it sounds like we're moving toward and have that model in place that will really allow for that. You know, as we conclude this conversation, and I really appreciate it, I have 2 key takeaways that you know, you've shared with me as our math really instructional leaders in Needham. One is that you are all working very hard to support teachers throughout the system to make sure they have the materials, the strategies, and the mindset for mathematics education in the Needham Public Schools. But the second thing that you're doing is making sure you're ensuring that there is a rigorous, comprehensive, and cohesive K through 12 continuum of math instruction that really is going to provide a strong foundation for our students so they can go on to a career or on to college and really be prepared. I appreciate the work, which is so incredibly important, and I appreciate you sharing this with the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time this morning.